Hey, we're talking about Moondog with Matthew McConaughey. Alright, alright, alright. That's why I don't do Matthew McConaughey impressions. In the Florida Keys, one man lives his life the way that he wants, whether that be through drugs, alcohol, with women, or all three combined. He never allows life to get him down, even through turbulent periods that affect most people negatively. This man's name is Moondog, and this is his story. I've heard things about this movie. Some things were good, some things were bad, mostly bad. I'm not a huge fan of Matthew McConaughey, so I wasn't really anticipating anything great or grand or whatever. Some things that he's in I really enjoy, but it's usually the project that I enjoy, not him. Nothing about the movie really entices me. But I am often proven wrong, so I watch pretty much anything. So what do I think of this movie? I'll give it one word. Unconventional. Let's get into it. When looking at the people category, you're going to be looking at Matthew McConaughey, Moondog, whatever, as the whole film revolves around him and his attitude towards life. This is quite honestly probably one of his most colorful characters that I've ever seen him play in. Most of the movies he's ever in, he's usually just himself, being the same basic character over and over and over again. This is something different, which is really nice to see from him. Not that I love the character, but it is nice to see a little bit of range when it comes down to who he is as an actor. He doesn't ever say, alright, alright, alright in the movie, though he does say, hey, 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 a lot of the time, so there is that. Now, I do like the acting in this movie, even though it's super, super subtle, and you really have to think about it and really have to dive deep into the layers of the film, because these people on the surface are pretty shallow and there's basically nothing about them. However, there are layers to them that the movie never really dives into that you can kind of see. It's hard to explain, but there is depth and there is a reason for why these people are doing what they're doing. It just doesn't take the conventional route a normal movie would take in explaining what that depth is. But when it really comes down to it, it's all really about the chemistry that Matthew McConaughey's character has with basically everybody. He's a fun-loving guy. He loves everybody. He doesn't discriminate. He doesn't care, basically. The only thing I would say is actually what most critics would say. This movie has no purpose. So basically, there is very little importance when it comes down to individual characters and why they are there and what they are doing to further the plot. Nobody, including Matthew McConaughey, is really furthering the plot. They're basically riding the waves, man. The people category gets 14 out of 20 possible stars. Honestly, I think this film mostly suffers in the writing category because nothing seems to be there. However, this is a comedy, and as such, it is a comedy that has some pretty good dialogue, some pretty good one-liners, specifically from Matthew McConaughey, who plays a poet in the film. So not only that, the dialogue is also important to the plot. There's only really a hint of plot in this movie, which actually surprised me. I didn't actually think it was going to be about anything whatsoever, but there is a little bit of a hint as to the direction of why he's doing what he's doing. But because it's unconventional, I don't really consider it very deep or meaningful. Even though depth is there, even though layers are there, it doesn't really feel like it. It really feels super, super shallow. It really feels like there is no purpose to anything when you watch it. In the end, it really doesn't feel like it's going anywhere. And when you're watching a movie, you want it to have narrative. You want it to feel like it's actually going somewhere for a reason, to find value in where they're heading. You just don't feel any of that, and for that reason, writing gets 6 out of 10. Clearly, the people behind this movie were visionaries, as they wanted the movie to look and sound really, really cool. The use of lighting and color specifically make this movie kind of a spectacle to watch. Actually, their use of songs as well as editing and everything really captivate mood. It's all about mood for this movie, right? It's all hanky-danky-doo. I'm making words up now. But you understand, it's all about mood. It's all about being cool with the times. It's all about being chill, yo. And colors and lighting and music and editing and all this fun stuff actually help encapsulate the idea of what the mood they were going for. I wouldn't say the cinematography really blew me away or anything, but everything else kind of did. 9 out of 10. Even though the movie doesn't have like any narrative structure, it does follow a pretty basic narrative arc. You know, introduction, inciting incident, obstacles, climax, and falling action. The introduction does a really good job introducing you to who Moondog is, who everybody in his life is, and why they are important to him. The inciting incident is kind of a spoiler, so I can't really tell you what happens that changes everything, but it does exist. And because I can't really tell you about the inciting incident, I can't really tell you about the obstacles, but he does have a plan of action. He does know what he's going after the inciting incident happens. It's pretty much ignored, but it is there, so I will give it full points. There's a good culminating event by the end for the climax, but it kind of just ends there. There's no real falling action. It doesn't really calm down. It doesn't really return to a new sense of norm. It just ends. 8 out of 10. Entertainment category, how entertained are you when it comes down to this movie? I think this completely depends on who you are and what kind of things entertain you, because I have seen people love this movie. I've also seen people hate it. I'm not going to sit here and say I had a terrible time with it, because I didn't. There was some times in this film where I laughed out loud. There was times in this movie where I just had a good time with it. However, these moments were far and few between. There are plenty of times in watching this movie where I kept on thinking, man, I just don't get it. I don't get it at all. Maybe it's because I'm not a huge fan of stoner comedy. Maybe that's it. Honestly, I think it's because there's nothing substantial about the movie. There's nothing in it at its heart that keeps people watching other than comedy, and that's just not enough for any comedy. Now, because this movie is so incredibly bizarre, there are things to discuss. There are things you want to talk about because you're kind of confused, or maybe because you're enlightened, or maybe it's because you're enjoying what you're watching. It doesn't really matter. There are things in there that you feel like you can discuss with somebody. I don't think that's from beginning to end, but it is there. But I would not rewatch this movie. I would definitely not buy it. I don't care to own it. And there is no moment in the movie that feels like you would miss something if you looked away, because it really feels like the same thing from beginning to end. Entertainment gets 2 out of 10. Specialty category, what do you expect to find out of the beach? Boom. As a Matthew McConaughey movie, where does this rank? I've said it before, I'll say it again. I'm not a huge fan of his, especially nowadays. I liked him more in his earlier career. From 2014 on, I haven't really cared about his career. But there are things to be said about his character here. This is probably his most colorful character he has ever done that I can think of, and that deserves some kind of merit. It's nothing that I love, but I will give it 5 out of 10. You go to any movie information website, you'll see that the second person on the cast listing is basically Snoop Dogg. What the heck is Snoop Dogg doing there? Where does this rank as a Snoop Dogg movie? You know, even though Snoop Dogg is playing a fictional character with a different name, he is still basically Snoop Dogg. There is very little difference between who he is today and who he is in this movie. He's still a rapper in the movie. He still has the same attitude. He still does drugs and is still obsessed with weed. He's still basically the same dude. There's no difference in watching him in this movie and watching him in one of his music videos or watching him on a talk show or anything like that. I'm going to give this 0 out of 10. He just doesn't stand out. As a comedy, is this movie funny? I think I mentioned this before, but it is funny. It did make me laugh, not from beginning to end, but it had its moments here and there that actually had me chuckling. But because the movie had no sustenance at all, it made me feel like the movie had no weight and made me feel like I would forget everything that happened in this movie pretty soon thereafter. 5 out of 10 for comedy. Halfway decent. Did they make the movie that they intended to make from the get-go? Yes, they did. If anything is clear about this movie at all, it would be that the vision of the director, the vision of the filmmakers, the vision of the writers, the vision of everybody was met when they made this movie. It is exactly what they sought after. That could be anything else. That's exactly what they went after. 10 out of 10. The specialty category gets 20 out of 40 possible stars. Once we add up all these points together, we get 59 out of 100 possible stars. 59%, which isn't that great, but it is a lot higher than I thought it would be. I thought it was going to be in the 40s. I thought it was going to be in the 30s even, because it didn't look like a very fantastic movie, but there was things to talk about that actually entertained me, that actually surprised me, and I'm going to give credit where credit is due. 59%. Guys, tell me what you thought of The Beach Bum in the comments down below. And as for YouTube, you know you can subscribe me. Hit that like button. Hit the bell to be notified when I come out with my next review. And until then, peace out.